Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode. I know many of you use these videos to help you sleep, so before we begin, I thought it would be fun for everyone to say hello and leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. Your engagement really makes this channel special. And hey, if you enjoy getting your nightly dose of thrills and chills with us, why not hit that subscribe button below? It's the best way to never miss out on the latest terrifying tales. So kick back, relax, and let's get started. Rain lashed against the thin walls of the cabin, a relentless drumming that seemed to vibrate through my bones. I was 10, curled up on the worn-out sofa with a well-loved copy of End of Green Gables. The flickering kerosene lamp cast an uneven glow across the small living room, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. My brother, Liam, 2 years older, sat opposite me, nervously whittling a stick with a pocket knife. Mom was miles away, attending a medical conference in the city. Dad, bless his heart, was a renowned photographer, currently chasing elusive mountain lions somewhere deep in the Alaskan wilderness. We were alone, entrusted to the care of Mrs. Abernathy, a kindly but frail woman who lived next door. But Mrs. Abernathy had fallen ill that evening, leaving us to fend for ourselves for the first time. A sudden, jarring crash from the kitchen shattered the fragile peace. Liam and I exchanged a wide-eyed look, a knot of fear tightening in my stomach. The cabin was old, prone to settling and creaking, but this was different, a deliberate, forceful sound. Liam, ever the protector, grabbed a heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace. His face, usually freckled and carefree, was pale and drawn. I fumbled for the phone, my hand trembling. There was no signal out here, a fact we both knew all too well. Another crash, closer this time, followed by a muffled curse. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird. Who could it be? This wasn't a tourist destination, the nearest town was a 2-hour drive away. Liam took a deep breath, his voice tight. "Stay here, Alex. I'll check it out." "No way," I whispered back, my voice barely audible over the drumming rain. "We go together." He hesitated, then nodded curtly. We crept towards the kitchen, each step echoing like a hammer blow on the wooden floorboards. The kerosene lamp sputtered and died, plunging us into darkness. Panic clawed at my throat as Liam fumbled for his lighter. The faint glow illuminated the kitchen. The back door, usually secured with a heavy chain and padlock, hung wide open, the chain snapped clean. Rain lashed in through the gaping hole, soaking the worn linoleum floor. A figure loomed in the shadows, tall and broad-shouldered. A man, clad in muddy clothes, rainwater dripping from his face. But it was his eyes that sent a shiver down my spine, cold, vacant, filled with a predatory hunger. Liam let out a strangled gasp. The man's head snapped towards us, a feral grin splitting his face. He lunged forward, a guttural growl ripping from his throat. Liam shoved me back, brandishing the poker like a spear. The sound of metal clanging against bone echoed in the small space. The man roared, momentarily stunned. I scrambled for the back door, the rain stinging my face as I bolted into the storm. Liam's scream, raw and filled with terror, cut through the wind. I didn't dare look back. I ran blindly through the rain-soaked undergrowth, the dense forest a labyrinth of shadows and dripping branches. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a fresh wave of panic crashing over me. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled into Mrs. Abernathy's yard, collapsing onto the rain-soaked porch steps. I pounded on the door, fear turning my desperate pleas into a choked sob. The door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Abernathy, her face pale and drawn. Seeing my state, she ushered me inside without a word. I clung to her thin frame, tears pouring down my face as I choked out the story. The terrifying image of the man burnt into my memory. The police arrived with the first light of dawn. The cabin was ransacked, drawers pulled open, belongings scattered across the floor. But Liam was gone. There were no signs of struggle, no clues as to what had transpired in the dark. The search continued for weeks, days blurring into a relentless nightmare. Hope dwindled with every passing sunrise. Finally, they found him, unconscious and battered, miles away deep in the woods. He had no memory of what happened after he charged at the intruder. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy. We moved back to the city, the cabin a chilling reminder of the night the darkness stole our innocence. But the memory of that night remains, a constant shadow lurking just out of sight. The fear of the unknown, the chilling realization that monsters don't always lurk under the bed, sometimes they creep in through the back door on a stormy night. The groan of the old porch swing creaked a lullaby against the backdrop of a relentless summer cicada chorus. I was 12, sprawled on the living room floor, nose buried in a battered paperback of Frankenstein. My brother, Ethan, a year younger, lay beside me, building a precariously tall tower of Legos. It was a Friday night, the air thick with the humidity of an approaching storm. Mom was working a double shift at the diner downtown, a familiar rhythm of our single-parent life. Grandma, bless her soul, was too frail to handle house calls anymore. We were on our own, a fact that instilled a thrill of independence even as a sliver of unease gnawed at me. Suddenly, a thump resonated from the kitchen. Ethan froze, Legos tumbling from his shaky grasp. We exchanged a silent glance, hearts hammering against our ribs. The old house always creaked and groaned, but this was different, a deep thud, like a body falling. Cautiously, I crept towards the kitchen, Ethan trailing close behind. The back door, usually deadbolt, stood ajar, a ragged tear visible on the screen. A cold dread snaked its way down my spine. We hadn't ordered pizza. Who could it be? Ethan whimpered, tears welling up in his eyes. I grabbed his hand, a silent promise of protection burning in my throat. We crept towards the kitchen, every floorboard creak echoing in the tense silence. A figure loomed in the shadowy interior, hunched over the fridge. Moonlight filtering through the window cast an eerie silhouette. I fumbled for something, anything, in the kitchen drawer, settling on a heavy metal spatula. Taking a deep breath, I lunged forward. Who's there? The figure whirled around, its face obscured by the darkness. A guttural growl ripped from its throat, not human, not anything familiar. Panic choked me as it lunged, a grotesque, emaciated body contorted in a predatory snarl. I swung the spatula with all my might, the metal connecting sickeningly with its skull. It stumbled back, screeching a sound that sent shivers down my spine. Ethan screamed, a high-pitched cry that mirrored my own terror. The creature lurched forward again, faster, more determined. I shoved Ethan behind me, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The spatula seemed laughably inadequate against this monstrosity. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air. A blinding flash illuminated the room as the storm unleashed its fury. Thunder crashed, shaking the old house to its foundation. In that split second of distraction, the creature hesitated. It was enough. I bolted towards the back door, Ethan at my heels. We ripped through the screen, the cool night air a welcome shock against the stifling terror. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of Mrs. Henderson's porch across the street. Panting, we collapsed onto the rickety swing, tears streaming down our faces. Mrs. Henderson, roused by the commotion, rushed out, her nightgown billowing in the wind. The storm raged through the night, a fitting backdrop to our nightmare. When the police arrived, Drawn by Mrs. Henderson's call, they found the back door forced open, shards of glass scattered across the kitchen floor. But the creature, the chilling embodiment of terror, was gone. The house, once a haven, now felt violated, its familiar creaks taking on a sinister tone. We moved out the next week, leaving behind the echoes of that night. Years later, the memory remains a chilling scar, a reminder of the night the darkness outside held something far worse than we could have ever imagined. The groan of the floorboards outside my room was like fingernails on a chalkboard in the dead of night. I was 8, tucked under the covers with my worn copy of Treasure Island, flashlight clutched tight. It was a school night, and the silence was the kind that presses against your ears. Grandma was in Mom's room down the hall, a fortress of blankets and snoring. I usually slept like a rock, but tonight, every creaking groan had my heart hammering. Then, it came again, a slow, deliberate shuffle down the hallway. Panic clawed at my throat. Grandma always locked the deadbolt. Who could it be? My door creaked open a sliver, revealing a sliver of hallway bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the nightlight. A dark shape shifted within it, tall and broad-shouldered. A man. My breath caught. Before I could scream, a hand, large and rough, clamped over my mouth. A fetid smell filled my nostrils, like damp earth and decay. "SHH," he rasped, his voice rough as sandpaper. "Don't make a sound, kid." Terror flooded me. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears stinging. He yanked the flashlight from my hand, plunging the room into darkness. My imagination ran wild, conjuring images of a monster from a nightmare. Suddenly, a struggle erupted down the hall. A muffled scream, "Grandma!" A chair scraped against the floor. Then, silence. The man on top of me grunted. He shifted, his weight pressing down on me. I could hear his ragged breaths in my ear. "Where is he?" he hissed. "Where's Jeremy?" "Jeremy? Who is Jeremy?" He squeezed my mouth harder, his voice turning desperate. "Tell me, kid. Or it gets worse." A sob escaped my lips. I didn't know who Jeremy was. I didn't know anything. Just then, the bedroom door burst open, flooding the room with harsh light. It was my brother, Austin, wielding a baseball bat, his face pale with fear. The man on top of me reacted with a guttural roar and lunged for Austin. They grappled, a tangle of limbs and grunts. I scrambled out of bed, tripping over the covers. I wanted to scream for help, but my voice was trapped behind a wall of terror. Suddenly, the man threw Austin aside and bolted towards the window. He smashed through the glass, a shower of shards raining down. He disappeared into the night, leaving a gaping hole in his wake. We stood there, frozen, the cold night air seeping in. Austin, still clutching the bat, whimpered. I ran to him, tears streaming down my face. The silence outside was deafening. But the most terrifying part? We never did find out who the man was, or who Jeremy was. He was just a nightmare made flesh, a chilling reminder that the darkness outside sometimes held horrors far worse than monsters under the bed.